to the first exciting episode of Kid TV. I'm roving reporter Caitlin. Today we start a series called Learning About Lawsuits. We'll be learning all about lawsuits in the civil justice system. Hi, this is Sydney, and you may be asking, why do I need to know about lawsuits? If you are asking that question, then keep watching. With us today is lawyer Ryan Hodge from Wichita, Kansas. Mr. Hodge will be teaching us all about lawsuits. So let's get started. So, Mr. Hodge, what is a lawsuit?
Well, a lawsuit is a way people can settle disagreements without having to have a shootout at high noon. Have you ever had a disagreement with your sister?
More like when Have and I had a disagreement with my sister.
Well, when you and your sister have a disagreement, usually someone like your mom or dad will get involved. They'll listen to the story, trying to decide what happened and the consequences. A lawsuit is the same thing. Someone will ask a judge to help decide what happened and the consequences.
Well, why can't they just talk it out?
You know, that's a great question. Most of the time, people are able to talk out their disagreements and get them settled. But sometimes the stakes are just too big, or the people's version of the facts is just so far apart that it takes a judge to settle a disagreement.
So how does a judge help?
Well, a judge will listen to each side and look at their evidence, and then he'll decide which side is probably right.
Whoa, you lost me. What is evidence? And what do you mean by a judge decides which side is probably right?
Whoa, I guess I went overboard with that answer. Let's try it this way. Let's suppose that Bob agrees to mow Mary's lawn for $25. Bob mows Mary's lawn, but after Bob is done, Mary doesn't think Bob did a good enough job to get the $25, and so Mary doesn't pay Bob. Bob might file a civil lawsuit to try to collect his $25.
I thought you were going to tell us about evidence and deciding who was probably right.
Okay, I'll tell you that now. After the lawsuit is filed, the judge might ask Bob what evidence he had that Mary owed him $25. Bob might present a written contract that Mary signed where he agreed to mow the lawn for $25, or Bob might tell the judge that he and Mary had a conversation where Mary agreed to pay him $25 for mowing the lawn. The contract or the conversation would be evidence that the judge would listen to and consider and then decide who is telling the truth. The law defines evidence as anything that makes a fact more likely. Evidence can be words somebody says, evidence can be a document, evidence could be a picture, it could be a tape recording, it could be an object such as a car. Any of these things is evidence depending upon the case. The judge will listen to the evidence, the judge will look at the evidence, and then the judge will decide who is more likely right than wrong.
But I have always heard about people being found guilty beyond reasonable doubt. So what is this more likely right than wrong stuff?
Well, in criminal cases, our government has decided that we have to be really sure somebody did something wrong because they might have to go to jail. And so that's why we say that they have to be found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. But in a civil case, the burden of proof is only more likely right than wrong.
Hey, there you go again. Civil case? What's that? Burden of proof? What's that?
Great questions. Sorry, I'm jumping too far ahead again. When most people think of a lawsuit, they're talking about a civil lawsuit. A civil lawsuit involves a disagreement between two or more people, and it usually involves money. Nobody goes to jail.
So what is burden of proof?
Well, in a civil lawsuit, the person bringing the lawsuit has what's called the burden of proof. That means they have to prove their story is more likely right than wrong. The law uses the phrase preponderance of the evidence, but it really just means that their story is more likely right than wrong.
I still don't understand. I mean, how can you be sure of what happened?
Well, let's go back to Bob and Mary. Let's suppose there's no written contract. There's just a handshake agreement between the two. Bob says that the agreement was that he would get $25 if he mowed the lawn. Mary, on the other hand, says that she would pay Bob $25 if he mowed the lawn and trimmed the hedges. The judge would listen to the stories and decide who was more likely right than wrong. If the judge decided that it was more likely right than wrong that Bob only had to mow the lawn, then the judge would order that Mary pay.
So the judge has to decide who's lying? How does he do that?
Well, he may have to decide who is lying. Sometimes people just honestly remember things differently. Did you ever play the game where you have like 10 kids and they sit in a circle and the first one says something and they whisper it to the second person and they whisper it, and by the time you get to the 10th person, what the 10th person says was said is completely different than what the first person says?
Oh yeah, that's hilarious. What is said by the first person is never the same as what the last person said.
Well, the circle game is not the only place where that can happen. Sometimes people can misunderstand what they heard. Sometimes people don't hear what they thought they heard. When that happens, it's up to the judge to decide what story is most likely right based upon the evidence.
Okay, I think I got it. Evidence, burden of proof, civil lawsuit. But you keep talking about a judge. What does a jury do?
Well, the Constitution gives the people the right to have their cases decided by 12 randomly selected people. A long time ago, the people who wrote the Constitution decided that it would be better to have people's cases decided by 12 members of the community who were randomly selected and put together in a jury, instead of having one person who decided all the disputes all the time. So if Bob and Mary had their disagreement, it could be that 12 randomly selected people from the community would sit and listen to the facts, and then they would decide what story was more likely right than wrong, instead of having a judge do it.
Okay, Caitlin, let's see if we have this. Okay, give me a quiz. What is a civil lawsuit? A civil lawsuit is a disagreement between two or more people and nobody goes to jail, and it usually involves money. Exactly. We use civil lawsuits instead of gunfights to settle disagreements. I'm glad I don't have to have a gunfight with my sister every time we have a disagreement. Me too. Next question. What is evidence? Evidence is anything that helps prove a point that people disagree about. For example, if I wanted to prove you ate chicken hearts once, I could show everyone the video of you doing it. That is so not funny. Besides, what video are you talking about? I'll never tell. Next question. What is burden of proof? Burden of proof means what the person bringing the lawsuit has to do to win her case. In a civil case, she has to prove her story is more likely right than wrong. You are doing a great job. Last question. What is a jury and why do we need them? We have them because our founding fathers thought this would work better than having one person decide all the disagreements in our community. Hey, Caitlin, you did a great job, but it looks like we're about out of time. I would like to thank our special guest speaker attorney, Ryan Hodge from Wichita, Kansas.
You are very welcome. Thank you for inviting me to talk.
You have been watching Kid TV. This is our first series called Learning About Lawsuits. Don't miss our next episode when we ask the question, what is a personal injury lawsuit? Until next time, be safe, be smart, and don't miss our next episode of Kid TV.